It's a far-reaching organization, the Abraham Global Peace Initiative. It's a Canadian-based NGO, but we function globally, combating anti-Semitism, defending Israel, Shoah remembrance, and combating Holocaust denial is a key area. And of course, the Abraham Accords, ensuring that the Abraham Accord countries remain close to Israel, and saying to them that Canadians and the Canadian Jewish community and the government, which is very influential around the world, that we care about the continuation of those Abraham Accords. And I know that from the Arab country perspective, they care about how they're perceived. And so this is part of the mission of the organization.
And we know that the Abraham Accords inspired many people, certainly here in Israel. People were inspired that finally peace is coming along, at least with some Arab countries. And now we're at war here in this country. What can you say about this last period? What is your organization trying to do in this last period since the war began?
So through this period, obviously we've been in touch with our partners, both in the UAE and especially Morocco, and we've been reinforcing the message. We've been checking in to see how it is that they're feeling. Look, obviously the Arab street, we know what they're seeing on Al Jazeera and what's going on in their own narrative. But at the end of the day, the governments themselves want to hold on to the Abraham Accords. They see it as beneficial, and everybody is waiting for the day after where we can resume talks, and I believe that that's going to happen.
Hopefully so. On October 7th, many Bedouins were involved in the event. Some were murdered by Hamas despite their Muslim identity. Some were kidnapped, and some helped save the lives of other Israelis who were there. And your organization held an event for these Bedouins. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, look, it began when I was producing a documentary film back in November about October the 7th. I went to Rehat, and I had interviewed Bedouins from that town, but they came in for that interview, and I was so inspired by their humility, by really the trauma that they themselves suffered, both helping and rescuing Israelis and Jews going into the Nova Party itself, into the heart of the fire, and bring them out. And the losses personal losses of family members. Many of their family members are still being held captive, and many died on that day. And so, the story itself inspired me, and I said, look, we have to recognize this heroism. We also have to ensure that they feel strongly about their connection with Israel, which they did during my interviews, and that they don't go the other way, because that can easily happen. And so, I wanted to recognize them. We did that with partnership with the Franz Zion Museum in Jerusalem. We had former President Rivlin and many other dignitaries there, including Avi Dichter. And so, they were really passionate about receiving this award from our organization. Many of them were crying on stage. That's how deeply moved they were by this recognition. And, we want to continue that relationship, and we want the world to see. Partly, we're seeing what's happening in Canada and the United States on university campuses. We want them to see that Israel is made up of multiple groups. And even the Bedouin and many Arab communities, the Druze communities, are Israelis, and they're being affected by this, and they are recognizing this, and they are denouncing Hamas itself. And that was part of the takeaways from this.
And we know, I just recently saw a video about many Israelis showing themselves and saying, essentially saying we're not the white colonialists that you think that we are, as the vast majority of Israelis are people of color, people who originated, their families came from Africa, from Morocco, from Algeria, from Egypt, and that's not what is perceived abroad. Abroad, it's perceived how, people in Israel are some kind of type of white colonialists, supremacists, occupiers, etc., etc. And in this specific video, it was just showing that, a large part of this, the majority part of this country are people of very ethnic and colorful background, including a 20% Arab population. So
That's right. And that's been the lie that's been told, unfortunately, by the Palestinian advocates in the diaspora. And they've been feeding this lie and linking up with indigenous groups, for example, in Canada and in America, and saying that they're the indigenous people. And of course, the Israelis are not. And so this is the lie that we've been combating, that Israel, of course, is made up of many groups. In fact, it's incredible how Israel has come together, and the showing of this diversity and coexistence and so forth, which is counter to the narrative that is actually being told, the real anti-Semitic narrative actually that is being told in university campuses and unions and the public. And just yesterday there's a Jewish hospital in Toronto called Mount Sinai Hospital. The Palestinian groups scaled the wall and waved the Palestinian flag in front of this hospital. A true anti-Semitic incident targeting a Jewish institution that has nothing to do with Israel, yet targeting it because it's Jewish.
And let's speak about anti-Semitism. Yesterday, the American Jewish Committee published a survey showing that nearly 2/3 of American Jews feel less secure in the United States than they did just 1 year ago.
Yeah, and these studies keep coming out, and of course, we're all aware, and the same thing with our constituency as well. We hear of some Jews taking off their mezuzahs off the doors. Some of them thinking, well, we're going to leave the country because clearly there's a threat against us. Jewish businesses are being targeted. We've seen that in Toronto and in elsewhere in the U.S. Jews being targeted on the streets. So yes, there is a feeling of insecurity. There's a call for greater security from the police services. My organization just released a report on university campuses where we went, first time ever, we instead of them grading us, we graded them, and we actually ranked them according to a report card that we created, and we gave 3 universities in Canada an F, a failing grade. We gave a bunch Ds, a bunch Cs, and many actually got an A for working hard to combat anti-Semitism. So it was very fair, but it shows you the incredible issues of the surge of anti-Semitism on our campuses and towards young Jewish students, who can't wear their Magen David on campus, who can't write a pro-Israel thesis, who are really concerned about their own state of affairs on campus. That shouldn't be. They shouldn't have to choose which university they go to when they're choosing universities. So, we are very concerned about the surge of anti-Semitism. The Jewish communities are combating it relentlessly, but it's really pushing back against those demonstrators, even on the streets, that are calling for the genocide of the Jewish people. But we're resilient. We're going to fight it hard.
I mean, we're seeing anti-Semitic acts everywhere. I mentioned America, you mentioned Canada. We're seeing it in France. In Australia, we know that pro-Palestinians released personal information of hundreds of Jews living in Australia. This is very widespread, the rise of anti-Semitism, and it makes you wonder how will it be possible to deal with this, in an effective way.
Yeah, this is going to stay with us for a very long time, especially the day after Gaza. When the media goes into Gaza, we know what's going to happen. All the stories and the propaganda is going to come out, and they're going to use it for their own purposes. So it's going to stay with us for a long time. Our communities abroad, are suffering tremendously, but we need to push back. We've got the left wing on one side that is aligned with the pro-Palestinian, pro-Arab base that would never set foot. The LGBTQ would never set foot in Gaza. They would be repressed in Gaza.
They would be hung and thrown off a roof.
And so they're aligning themselves with Hamas. And how is that possible? So we need to do a better job, a stronger job to convince them, to get them to understand what they're actually standing up for. Women's groups. We were all shocked by women's groups not standing up for the women who were raped on October the 7th. But eyes have been opened. It's interesting because there is a little bit of a silver line. Jewish communities were asleep. Many young people were asleep. their eyes have been opened to the truth and to the reality, and now they're standing up much more solidly behind Israel. You see young Jewish people all across North America and in Europe now becoming stronger Zionists, understanding the truth, understanding the reality. And there is a silver lining to this that's happened, that we've now solidified the Jewish world much more.
Avi Benlolo, thank you very much for coming in and discussing this with us.
Thank you for having me.